on, everybody? This is Sean of Raw Select Music. Today I wanted to talk about this album right here. This is Bad Bad Not Good's Talk Memory, released on XL Recordings on October 8th, 2021. Seeing as how I am kind of a Bad Bad Not Good super fan, with their albums 3 and 4 being two of my favorite albums of the 2010s, when this album got announced, it quickly became my most anticipated album of the year, and the hype levels for it were off the charts. So now that I've given it quite a few listens, today I wanted to give you my thoughts and opinions of it, and let you know not only how it stacks up against their own catalog, but also, just in general, if it's worth listening to. So with all that being said, yeah, let's talk about this guy. So just a little bit of background for those of you who might not know, Bad Bad Not Good were named after a show that keyboardist, pianist Matthew Tavares had been working on that he eventually abandoned. He met the other members of the group at Humber College's jazz program in 2010 over their mutual love of hip-hop, and were originally formed as a trio with Tavares on keys, Chester Henson on bass, and Alexander Sowinski? I think that's right, on drums. They quickly grew to prominence thanks to playing a cover of an Odd Future track that caught the attention of Tyler the Creator, who helped the video go viral on YouTube. Not long after that, they would release an EP entitled BBNG in 2011, another album called BBNG 2 in 2012, and would eventually collaborate, work with, and open for other artists like hip-hop producer Frank Dukes, Joey Badass, Freddie Gibbs, Kay Trinata, Earl Sweatshirt, Roy Ayers, Danny Brown, and so many more. Needless to say, they've gained a rather large profile over the years with their celebrated albums, covers, and collabs, but sadly, in 2019, founding member Matthew Tavares announced on Instagram that he was leaving the band. Up until recently, the details surrounding his departure were murky, but on December 11th, 2021, Matthew took to his Instagram to tell his side of the story. Needless to say, the picture painted here isn't very pretty. However, it is still one side of the story, and by the looks of things, it really doesn't need my assessment as to who is ultimately the bad guy here. So, with all that being said, let's just move on. In the making of Talk Memory, the band said, "It took over a year or two of just living life to get to a place where the creative process was exciting again. And once we went into the studio, it was the most concise recording and writing process we've ever had. We hope that the improvised studio performances bring the listener closer to our live experience." And over on the Bandcamp, their bio said that this time around that there was more focus on writing and composition, and instead of improvising and growing the tracks on tour, the process happened in the studio. But on top of all that, they enlisted the help of some big-name legendary musicians like Kareem Riggins, Arthur Verkai, Terrace Martin, Larige, and harpist Brandy Younger. Overall, despite some more mixed reviews, the album has a respectable 97 on Metacritic, with Under the Radar saying this, and some of the more mixed reviews having this to say. So where do I stand in all of this? I'll be honest, I am not as in love with this record as I'd really like to be, which is really a shame because what is here is actually really, really good. The band is still just as tight as ever. They're playing off of each other like veteran musicians. Some of the arrangements on here are really, really great, and some of the songs on here will definitely become some of my favorite tracks in their entire catalog. Yet, as a whole, as a listening experience, this is easily my third favorite Bad Bad Not Good release. And it really just feels like there's an element missing here. I mean, there's all these great things going on here. The Arthur Verkai string arrangements that pop up throughout the album are often lush and gorgeous and really enhance a lot of the tracks on here. Brandy Younger's harp playing on the track Unfolding is absolutely gorgeous. And the band really shows that they still have a sense for dynamics on the leadoff single, Signal from the Noise, which was easily my favorite track on here. But ultimately, I feel like it lacks something that made their previous albums so good. And it might be that there's seemingly this push away from the more experimental blending of genres you got on their previous albums, where they would push jazz and electronic music and dance music and post-rock all into this wonderful, really creative and original sound, and instead that they've decided to really push jazz as the majority sound and everything else is just sort of ancillary, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. You should always probably double down on the things that make your band stand out, and these guys are still very proficient jazz musicians. But ultimately, at the end of the day, these tracks just don't hit me in the same way that their other albums do. And I really hate to say it, but I think the absence of Matthew Tavares on this album really does affect the direction of the band. Whereas even though their previous albums definitely had an improvised feel to them, they still felt largely very directed and very deliberate. Whereas a lot of the tracks on here feel sort of aimless and sort of meandering. And they all sound pleasant enough for sure, but they don't really seem to have the same sort of flow or the same sort of deliberateness that their previous works did, even when they would go into long improvised passages. And if it sounds like I'm being overly negative on this album, it's only because I want to love it more than I actually do. But truth be told, I actually still do really like this album. It's full of a lot of great highlights. There's really only one track on here, Open Channels, that I don't particularly care for because it represents the worst aspects of this album. It's meandering and it feels just ultimately kind of directionless. But I actually do really like a lot of the tracks on here. The opener, Signal from the Noise, is a beautiful marriage of post-rock and jazz, very similar to the song Speaking Gently off their album 4, and it's one of my favorite songs of the year, bar none. And then later on with the several tracks that Arthur Verikai's string arrangements pop up on, specifically the track Love Proceeding, is another album highlight, and it shows off that when the band is being more focused and more deliberate in their song arrangements, that this new direction that they're aiming for, it can work for them. So really, at the end of the day, do I recommend this album? Yes, absolutely, definitely check this out. But I would also recommend that you pick up their other albums first, because I'll be honest, this really is the weakest album in their catalog to date. I still think there's a lot of potential. I still think that they will eventually release another project as good as their previous albums. But for me, this one kind of left me a little bit cold. Again, not a bad album by any stretch. It's still gonna be one of my favorites of the year, but it didn't end up being the album of the year that I anticipated. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. I'm just gonna leave it there. So that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thanks as always for watching. If you've listened to this album for yourself, please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. If you want to hear this album for yourself, please head over to my WordPress blog, because that's where I post music links to any of the albums that I talk about on this channel. And make sure you head over to my Twitch channel, Raw Select Music Sean. There you can catch live from the record room my weekly DJ live streams where I play records like the ones that I talk about in these videos, as well as a whole host of other records in my collection that I don't get a chance to talk about on this channel. Links to everything, as always, down in the description. So that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thanks as always for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. So until then, peace out!